Добар ден на сите. Се надевам дека се слушаме. Тогаш да почнуваме. Повторно добар ден. Почитуван министре ШАQIRI, почитуван амбасадор GEER, почитувана KRISTINA REINSALU, програмска директорка за демократија во e-Governance Academy, почитуван Крис WORMAN, вице-председател за развој на програми и ресурси во TechSoup Global, почитувани колеги, пријатели, представници на невладини организации, медиуми, бизниси, образовни институции и сите други што не следат денеска онлайн. Добре дојдовте сите на овогодинешното издање на конференцијата Е-општество, која традиционално ја организираме секоја година, оваа година по 16 пат, но прв пат целосно онлайн. И некако добива уште повеќе смисла називот на конференцијата Е-општество, бидејќи оваа година не само конференцијата, туку заради пандемијата сме приморани многу работи да ги направиме онлайн, работиме, организираме состаноци, обуки, вебинари, еве конференции, децата учат онлайн и ето од Е-општество станува реалност. Секако дека никој не сака Е-општество која ни е наметнато поради било какви несречни околности како што е оваа година COVID-19, туку сакаме Е-општество каде што онлайн работата, учењето, забавата е наш избор, каде што ќе се чувствуваме безбедни, знаеме компетентно да ја користиме технологијата за да бидеме поефикасни во нашата работа и таа дигитална трансформација што сите ја доживуваме да се обликува според нашите приоритети и потреби. Токму тоа ќе бидат темите со кои ќе се занимава оваа година конференцијата и како и секоја година низ сесиите ќе се обидеме заедно да ги идентификуваме предизвиците, да дискутираме и да понудиме препораки за делување и акција, бидејќи колку ќе биде успешна дигиталната трансформација и колку ќе придонесе вистински за нашето поквалитетно живење, зависи од тоа колку ќе бидеме активно вклучени во создавањето на простор, односно средина која вклучува, се разбира, техничка инфраструктура, но и институционална и законска рамка која ќе придонесе вистински технологијата да се користи за добро. Но да не должам, за ова ќе се збори детално во текот на конференцијата. Сега би сакал да го поканам министерот ШАQИRI да ја отвори и даде воведно обраќање на конференцијата. Повелете, министре.
Ви благодарам многу, господине BARDHYL. Првин сакам да упатам поздрав до господину Дейвид GEER, амбасадор на Европска унија во Република Северна Македонија, исто така на KRISTINA REINSALU, директор на програмата за демократија во Академијата за владење. Почитувани колеги, почитувани пријатели, дозволете ми да започнам со честитки за организаторите за успешната организација на оваа конференција и покрај предизвиците во кои се сочува. Воедно сакам да ги поздравам сите учесници и слушатели на овој виртуален настан. Големо задоволство и чест ми е да зборувам на оваа широка тема, која е многу важна во контекст на нашите европски аспирации. На почетокот на овој месец на самитот во Софија во рамките на Берлинскиот процес беше усвоена декларација за заеднички регионален пазар која ќе придонесе кон подлабока регионална економска интеграција и не носи еден чекор поблиску кон европскиот пазар. Акцизниот план за заеднички регионален пазар ќе ја унапреди регионалната трговска размена на стоки, услуги и движење на луѓе капитал. Се работи за конкретни мерки што ќе донесат опливи придобивки за компаниите и за граѓаните во регионот, вклучувајќи намалување на прекограничните банкарски такси, отстранување на технички бариери за трговија, усогласување на политики за инвестиции, прекогранично признавање на електронските документи и признавање на професионалните квалификации низ целиот регион. Дигиталната агенда за Западен Балкан е тесно поврзана со активности на кои ние како Министерство и сега ги реализираме, но и ги планираме да ги реализираме во нареден период, за да го намалиме дигиталниот јаз, мора да обезбедиме сите граѓани да може да ги користат сите придобивки од новите технологии. Владата ќе продолжи да соработува со сите граѓани, невладини организации, останати партнери со цел економски напредок, но и ќе остане флексибилна и одговорна при нови можности и предизвици кои ќе ни излегуваат и ќе ги имаме како влада. Министерството за информатичко општество и администрација е координатор на иницијативата за отворено владино партнерство, која потврдува и заложбата за континуирано подобрување на работа на владата, темелно на отворени, транспарентни, сигурни и ефикасни владини институции кои комуницираат и соработуваат со граѓаните. Во рамките на оваа иницијатива еден динамичен, инклузивен амбиент на петиот национален акцијски план за период 2021-2023 година, кој се фокусира на следните приоритетни области, тоа на транспарентност, отчетност, проактивност и инклузивност, спречување на корупција и промовирање на добро владење, испорака на јавните услуги и пристап до правда. Секако приоритетни области по својот опфат ги промовират и целите за одржлив развој на државата, но и особено внимание се посветува и влијанието на COVID-19 пандемијата врз состојбите во соодветни области. Едновремено би сакал да споделам дека темелно на оваа иницијатива во Република Северна Македонија се воведува отворените податоци, при што се овозможија механизам и услови за развој на отворени податоци и нивната повторна употреба. Континуирано работиме на поттикнување на објавување и користење на отворени податоци со крајна цел да се зголеми транспарентноста и отчетноста на државните институции, да се подобри квалитетот на услуги кои тие ги нудат, да се зголеми свесноста на сите чинители во процесот за отворени податоци, а во исто време да се поттикнат и иновациите. Исто така би сакал да нагласам дека граѓанскиот сектор акумулира огромна креативна енергија, која треба да се користи поактивно во јавниот и преку подобрување и негување на култура на вклучување и почитување на правата на сите граѓани во процесот на креирање на политики, донесување одлуки, донесување на закони и пристап до информации. Обврските во поглед на транспарентност во вршење на владини активности, како и вклучување на граѓанските организации представуваат висок приоритет во агендата на нашата влада на Република Северна Македонија. При тоа, да не заборавиме една многу важна алка, слободата на изразување, слободата на медиумите и заштита на медиумското плурализам, право на информирање, развој на медиумите, независна продукција и развој на медиумската писменост, мислам дека се многу важни фактори. Влијанието на онлайн медиумите се зголемува со пробивот на дигитализација, но нивното правилно регулирање е многу потешко отколку традиционалните медиуми. Спречување на ширење на лажни вести е една од областите каде што е потребно поголем ангажман од сите засегнати страни во општеството, затоа што последиците можат да бидат фатални. Критичното размислување и медиумската писменост се најважните алатки кои можеме да ги примениме во борбата со лажните вести. Ова се основни вештини со кои треба да располага целокупното население и за да може да се стајде во дигиталниот свет. Според истражувањето и проекциите на Европска Унија во 2020 година дури 90% од работните места ќе бидат одредено ниво на дигитални вештини. Ова е земно предвид при изработка на долгорочната ИЦТС стратегија, која моментално е во завршна фаза. Една од главните столбови на оваа стратегија ќе бидат и дигиталните вештини. Ќе работиме на унапредување на дигиталните вештини на целокупното население. Ќе работиме, кога викам на целокупното, кај младите, кај старите, кај наставниците, кај администрацијата, кај студентите, кај вработените, кај жените, кај мажите, оние кои od gradski i od ruralne sredini i не е важно само што ќе понудиме на граѓаните, важно е дали тие знаат да ги користат придобивките од истото или придобивките од дигиталните вештини. Од своите скромни почетоци, интернетот органски еволуираше и стана најефикасна алатка во историјата на човештвото. Интернетот е дигитална сила на природата и таков мора да се управува одговорно и со најголема грижа. Ние мора да стремиме да задржиме интернетот на слободен, неутрален и достапен за сите, истовремено заштитувајќи ги граѓаните на постојаните ризици. Зашто кога кажуваме дека интернетот и придобивките што ги имаме, интернетот во многу ситуации и во многу прилики имаме отворени прашања кои се разликите и кои се проблемите со 5G, новата мрежа ова што ќе ни биде достапна на сите. Јас истовремено го искористувам можноста и на сите им кажувам дали ние бевме толку упорни да знаеме информација за 4G или 3G или 2G, толку колку што сме упорни на 5G, но истовремено на интернет вештините им кажувам, сите сме свесни дека ако требаше да направиме или да атачираме некој файл, документ, требаше да чекаме на 5, 10, 20 минути, ќе дојде време кога и нашите ова обраќања со големи, како да кажувам, гигабајти или нашите емисии веднаш ќе може да се атачират за дел од секундите и да се префрлуваат од еден мейл во друг мейл. Доверливи и безбеден сајбер простор е издвоена како една од најважните наши цели во националната стратегија за сајбер безбедност. За крај, не сакам да продолжам се уште, ќе ми е задоволство да ги слушам и другите, дека сакам да потенцирам дека управување со интернет не е лесна задача, потребно е учество на сите засегнати страни, вклучувајќи најразлични перспективи. Потребно е да ја преминеме целата колективна мудрост која ја имаме за решавање на проблемот на денешница, истовремено предвидичи ги импликациите за еднина. Уште еднош ви благодарам многу за поканата, на сите други учесници кои не ги споме, сите имат поздрав од мене. Ви посакувам успешна конференција и дискусија која со задоволство уште еднош ќе ја слушам. Ви благодарам многу.
Благодарам многу, министре ШАQIRI. Ова е најрелевантна и најодговорна за дигитализацијата во нашата земја и на некој начин ги предводи сите процеси поврзани со дигитализацијата, но и развојот на медиумите. И затоа исклучително ја цениме нивната отвореност и соработка со Metamorphosis, но и со невладиниот сектор генерално. Би сакал сега да ја дадам збор на KRISTINA REINSALU од e-Governance Академијата од Талин, Естонија. Повелете.
Yeah, hello everyone. I just try how it works to share. Yeah, I would love to share my screen. Do you see it now?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, perfect. Hello everyone. Yeah, my name is KRISTINA REINSALU and I'm Program Director of e-Democracy at the E-Governance Academy Estonia. And let me start with saying how thankful I am for this opportunity. Thank you for having me, and it's my pleasure and honor to share with you some of my experiences. I strongly believe that technology shapes governance models and practices and creates many new horizons for civic engagement. In my short presentation, I focus on what are the most important first steps and aspects to be considered for a rapid and successful digital transformation in society and inclusion of communities and civil society. And of course, it is needless to say how particularly important this is at times of crisis, and as this creates definitely a favorable context for finding solutions to wicked problems and helps indeed to increase trust of citizens towards decisions, which helps governments to manage those crises efficiently. By efficiently, I mean, of course, not violating the rights of freedom and privacy. And for the last year, I have had opportunity also to be involved in consulting some civil society organizations from Western Balkan countries. And I see how much energy there are and how many good ideas those civil society organizations have. And I really hope that this energy can be converted into successful development and implementation of digital agenda in Balkan region. So hopefully my short intervention can bring you some inspiration for that from Estonia and beyond. So partnerships. I'm representing civil society organization myself, but for more than 15 years, I have been working with municipalities and state authorities. And I have learned one thing that during all those years, that crowd is power. So nobody is good, smart, efficient alone. So my first recommendation to you, to any country, to any organization is to create smart partnerships in the society. Estonia is definitely a remarkable showcase of how to use technology to develop a modern, inclusive and safe society. But this grew out of a partnership between a forward-thinking government or proactive IT sector, but also tech-savvy society. Let me once again stress the importance of creating efficient partnerships between government and civil society organizations, which always results in smarter decisions. And by the way, it was, as we know everywhere, it was also the IT community and civic activists who joined their forces during the current COVID pandemic to create solutions to reduce the pressure on the economy, to help people and to support the state with analysis and solutions. And this, of course, worked better where this strong partnership was already present. And I also, it was mentioned earlier in first speaker that open government partnership. I also point out how important and how good framework and methodologies this is for improved relationship and partnership between civil society and government sector. Well, Estonian strategy. Estonia is really good playground for civic engagement in digital society because a lot of different processes happened at the same time. Our independence, a technical revolution and development of civic and political culture. And we are always asked how we did and what we did actually to have this digital transformation happening so quickly. And there are a few aspects I would like to point out. First, innovation and also democratic innovation appears not when you have many resources, but quite the opposite. When you don't have resources, you have to be creative, you have to innovate. Only said you innovate. When we liberated ourselves from occupation, we were a poor country, need to build up a state from scratch. We needed to leapfrog. And it was common understanding in the society that we need to do something completely differently to catch up the world. As modern technologies were already available, we decided that the smart use of technology is the way forward to build a secure, inclusive, engaging society. And secondly, it is very important smart nudging of government to make people use the internet and create services is crucial. For me, there are few important projects which have created a favorable context in Estonia for the development of a digital society. And I share because I think they are very much in line what has been mentioned earlier also. How important it is to educate people digitally and to enable easy and cheap access. So what were the first steps which have, especially now assessing in retrospective, had the biggest impact on the digital transformation in Estonia? In Estonia, we see that one of the strategic decisions and actions of Estonian government in cooperation with private sector was to consistently push citizens to become heavy users of the internet, the ID card, and through this also different e-services. It is important because if the goal is to achieve fast digital transformation, especially in a poor country, the first crucial step is really to enable easy access for everybody, especially for vulnerable people, and to great readiness to use the internet and e-services. You also need good digital education. So in Estonia, the Tiger Leap project started in 1997 already, was about establishing computerized classrooms and connecting all schools to the internet, enabling free internet access for teachers and students. And in parallel, free internet courses were provided through the Look at the World program to advance digital literacy. And as a recent international study revealed, the preparedness of Estonian kids and teachers for e-learning was better than in other countries for the COVID situation. And Estonian access to personal computers was better. I believe strongly that these first steps had really very strong impact. Of course, we have had very fancy e-participation projects afterwards, but I think these were key first steps. However, having said this, there is one thing I would like to stress over and over again. Technology itself is never the key or the only requirement for creating change in governance. It is more about change management, procedures. Most of all, it is changing the mindset of all partners involved. And most efficient civic engagement initiatives, I would argue, are those which combine digital tools with offline tools. So I'm just giving you a simple example from participatory budgeting process, which I'm sure you are familiar with the concept, whereas citizens of today definitely expect that also participatory budgeting is using digital platforms to submit ideas, to comment on ideas, to vote on ideas. It is still very wise to also use physical spaces creatively to bring the process as close to the citizens as possible. For instance, organizing exhibition of ideas in places most visited by people, like it is done in my city, where we present all ideas on the bridge, which every citizen passes every day. If we talk about youth engagement, I think it has been mentioned earlier also that it is a very important aspect of civic engagement. The combination of offline and online can be much more efficient as well. For instance, technology enables organizing elections and e-voting for youth councils, as some local governments in Estonia do. But there is a trick about it that to really empower young people, you should also give them actual power. For example, what one of Estonian local municipalities does is really outsourcing many activities to this youth council. Those photos from Festival of Crazy Ideas, so young people this youth council is organizing. So one recommendation is also to start small, start now, but give much power to young people. And to conclude, yes, technology has great potential to amplify and support democratic processes in the society. And it can create new innovative opportunities to fight corruption, to help voters to make better informed decisions. But what citizens really need are really those e-tools that not just enables them to be consulted, but really enables them to engage and act right now. Though this is just the landing page of one crowdsourcing platform we created recently for Moldova, which is a country which struggles a lot with corruption. So this is a platform where citizens can be tested their perception of corruption, can learn about concrete cases, but what is more important, they can report anonymously on concrete corruption risky situations, corruption cases, and this input then is used by civil society organizations in order to plan their advocacy activities. So real action, a concrete outcome. And last but not least, there are, finally going back to where I started, the crowd is power. So crowdsourcing, one more example of crowdsourcing. We can nowadays crowdsource tracking the implementation of policies also. Let me bring one example. This is a promise tracker devised by MIT Media Lab in US. It is a mobile application and process for Brazilian students, for example, to track the implementation of policies, namely health policies. The users are students who are tracking whether a policy promise has been fulfilled. They are able to measure and provide feedback on school lunches, tidiness of classrooms, contributing this way into assessing the impact of health policies and giving input to improve them. So, takeaways, just repeating what has been already said by me earlier. So, great partnerships. E-tools are not miraculous PR or any kind of weapons, but technology has a great potential. Start small, start now with low-hanging fruits, I would say, but start really now. And opt and reuse already existing technologies, platforms, and engage citizens, but only when possible, needed and meaningful, when you're really absolutely sure what is going to happen with their contribution. So having said this, thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, I will be looking forward to your questions if there will be opportunity to answer them.
Thank you very much, Кристина. Благодарам, Кристина, што ги сподели со нас искуството од Естонија и најдобрите практики. Естонија е една од водечките земји во Европа и светот во дигиталната трансформација и се надеваме дека нивниот пример и модел на успех ќе биде инспирација и за нас. Затоа е уште поважно партнерството што го имаме со e-Governance Академијата во рамките на овој проект. Сега му давам збор на амбасадорот Дейвид Гир, шеф на делегацијата на Европската Унија во нашата земја. Повелете, амбасадоре.
Mr. SHAQIRI, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, well, I'm delighted to join you. And let me just first of all start, even before launching into my set speech, how much I endorse many of the comments made by the Minister, and we'll be repeating them here, but how in particular I enjoyed the last presentation. I actually have asked the question many times to myself, why Estonia? And I think you partly answered that. And I have one takeaway from this, which is I love the idea of the Festival of Crazy Ideas. I think that's a really great way of talking about innovation and creativity in a safe environment. So I'm going to take that away and think about it some more, and I may even be in touch with you on about it. So now the more formal speech. So it's a great pleasure to be part of this forum, which has long been at the forefront of debating digital benefits and digital challenges. It's very clear that the European Union, as many parts of the world, is going through a process of transformation at the moment. That transformation is aimed at creating a modern, open society, efficient society and efficient economies, which are not based on the use of resources, but which are green friendly. And so part of that transformation is the green agenda. But digitalization is also one of the key elements of that agenda within the European Union. And of course, that transformation within the European Union also applies within the Western Balkans. And it's particularly important at the moment when, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the huge economic impact that it is having on the lives of so many, that we're able to build back better, not only on the green agenda, but also on digitalization. Now, in October, the European Commissioner BARDHYL came to North Macedonia, and in fact visited the entire region, and presented what is known as the Economic and Investment Plan for the Western Balkans. And this is a plan designed to promote and support investment in the region with connectivity at the heart of it, connectivity in energy, connectivity in transport, but connectivity in digitalization in particular. And the goal here is not only to promote economic development and building back from the COVID-19 pandemic, but also to help create an environment which is attractive for investment. Of course, in order to develop that environment, it's essential that the fundamentals are also developed, that there is a strong commitment to respect for the fundamental reforms based on the EU's acquis.
Mr. Ambassador, I'm sorry, I believe you've muted yourself accidentally, or somehow it happened.
When did I cut off? Can you hear now?
Yes, we hear you now. Just 10 seconds ago. So yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Well, as I've been saying, the European Union has already been providing considerable support, and through the Economic and Investment Plan, will be continuing to provide significant financial assistance, including in the area of digitalization. Digitalization supports opportunities in all segments of society. You know that, in fact, better than me. E-government, e-procurement, e-health services, digitalization in the judiciary. It makes services not only faster and easily accessible to citizens and businesses, but it's also a key, as has already been said, to transparency and accountability. But in order to benefit from the digital revolution, a number of things need to be in place. First, of course, there needs to be infrastructure. And again, the Economic Investment Plan is designed to help support the development of that infrastructure. At the same time, secondly, there needs to be a proper regulatory framework which ensures that the digital world is an equal, fair playing field and the proper protections are in place. Later today, you'll hear a very interesting proposals coming from the European Commission concerning the creation of a neutral data sharing within the European Union. There's going to be a press conference in the next hour or so. And that's part of that digital strategy where you really see the Union trying to come forward with ideas in this area. And of course, third is education, the skills that are necessary to be able to benefit from the internet, from other digital forms, which is absolutely vital. And as the Minister has already said, going to the heart of this is also the skills, the media literacy, the understanding, the ability to engage with all of the challenges that come with digitalization. And I just mentioned here that, of course, one of the organizing bodies, Metamorphosis, who we've worked with for many years, has had, unfortunately, very appalling examples recently of the way in which fake news and the way in which the advantages of digitalization can be misused. Now, North Macedonia has undertaken, by signing the Stabilization and Association Agreement, to harmonize its policies and laws in the field of electronic communications and the information society with those of the European Union, and will continue working very closely with it in that regard. One of the ways in which the European Union is helping North Macedonia is through our ongoing support to e-services for companies and citizens, with the goal once again that rather than waiting in line, citizens and firms will be able to obtain the necessary documentation and information at a click. Other EU supports concerns the drafting of a long-term digital strategy. And as the Minister has mentioned, a group of EU experts have worked with the Ministry of Information Society and Administration and other key stakeholders and national experts. And the ICT strategy will be the basis for prioritizing activities and budget planning for digital transformation of Macedonian society. Turning this digital strategy into reality will be a complex process, of course. It's a work in process that will require consultation with all stakeholders. And here I fully endorse all that has been said about the importance of civil society engagement. It's a process that will have to employ multidisciplinary knowledge while bearing in mind the interests of citizens, business, and society as a whole. I'd like to wish you every success in the next, in the continuing discussions of this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Благодарам многу, амбасадоре. Поддршката на Европската Унија е исклучително важна за сите сектори во нашето општество, посебно што и нашата земја сака да биде дел од Европската Унија. А за нас како невладини организации е особено важно тоа дека секогаш Европската Унија и нивната поддршка ни дава можност да се артикулираат и слушаат нашите ставови, за да можеме да ја вршиме нашата демократска улога во општеството и со тоа и ние да придонесеме во процесот на демократизација и просперитет. На крај му давам збор на мојот колега и пријател Крис WORMAN од TechSoup Global. Повели, Крис.
Well, hello, and thank you all for the space today. It's a pleasure to share the time and the opportunity to reflect on some ideas about digitalization, digital transformation, and civil society with such wonderful colleagues. I very much appreciated I'm calling you colleagues as if we're already working together. We just met, but my new friends, KRISTINA and Ambassador GEER. The words about the relationship between civil society, technology, and governance. Very much appreciate the examples coming out of Estonia, an incredible leader in the space, and Mr. Ambassador's points about digital transformation and some of the needs and challenges there. I think a slightly different take from TechSoup. Some of you may know TechSoup. We're a 30-plus-year-old civil society organization that helps other NGOs get and use technology. So we're a global civil society technology capacity building organization. Metamorphosis is one of our best partners in North Macedonia, and together we have served around the world through our partners like BARDHYL, roughly 1.6 million grassroots civil society organizations. So we have a very broad and deep at the same time picture of what civil society is. What does civil society actually do? And while all of the points raised around governance are absolutely true and critical, again, a slightly different perspective on civil society as a service sector, as a community that is overwhelmingly committed to after-school programs and community health care, education work, things that are working on job creation, focused on disadvantaged communities, disabilities, rights, etc. The sort of bread and butter of everyday grassroots civil society. For most of us, the kind of civil society that we might have, had the opportunity to learn from as we grew up. When we think about this community and sort of their role in digitalization and digital transformation, a quick story that I think exemplifies why we get excited about this space. Our partners in Ireland worked with a group of social service organizations on understanding what shared technology challenges they might have. The community of organizations identified that they did not have a case management solution that was fit for purpose. So they didn't have a technology that helps them interact with the homeless or addiction services populations that they were trying to support. They had some tools. The tools were generally designed for the corporate sector for more, let's say, large scale health interventions. And they were either too expensive or just not that great. And so we worked with them to design the tool that they actually needed. What that meant in the end was a tool that both sort of met their daily operations and work requirements, but also captured data in a format that they needed for mandatory reporting requirements to both the Irish government as a funder and to the European Union as another funder. Before, They not only had bad tools, the tools did not spin out data in a way that was usable. They spent enormous amounts of time reformatting their data for their reports so that they could do, again, their mandatory reports to their funders. So through this process, we helped them design the tool that they actually needed. We built the tool, we deployed the tool with them, and now more than 90% of the social service organizations in Ireland who are focused on addiction or homelessness use this tool. First output, or first outcome, it saves them time and money. The tool is the tool that they actually needed. And that's great. They're saving a lot of time and effort doing things like, that they had to do before. They don't have to reformat their data. It's more efficient, so they have more time to serve. Wonderful. Perhaps as importantly, maybe even more importantly, because they're all using the same tool, all of the data that comes out of it is in the same format. With the data being in the same format, they built a collaborative where they pool their data and they run visualizations over it. So they can create real-time maps of Ireland and services being provided to people, again, in the homelessness or in the addiction space. They can take that data, and they have very successfully taken that data to the Irish government and said, look, here is Ireland. Over here, there are people, but there are no services. Knowing humans, there might be some addiction challenges in that area. Let's do some research. Let's get in there and figure it out. So on one hand, they saved a lot of time and money. On the other, they had truly collective intelligence on communities that otherwise would have remained invisible. That to us is what gets exciting about digital transformation of civil society. Not just that people could move smarter and faster by using data to inform their programs and get better, but that civil society, this enormous community, most people don't realize quite how big civil society is. Globally, we're talking about a $4 trillion community made up of 10 to 12 million NGOs, employing or as volunteers or full-time staff around 290 million people. We're talking in the United States about the third largest employment sector. In most countries on the planet, 12% to 14% of people work in civil society. Enormous community who has an incredible amount of insight into populations who are historically marginalized, disenfranchised, and left out of decision-making processes. NGOs have data and the capacity to capture data on these communities so that, to Ambassador GEER's point, as we think about building back stronger, we can build back stronger with insight into to whom we are trying to serve that otherwise we will lack. We will continue to make mistakes in our policy making because we will accidentally exclude people about whom we have no insight. So again, to us, that's a lot of what gets really exciting about the potential to digitally transform this enormous service sector so that they can bring forth their data. Yes, serve better, faster, smarter with technology, but two, that they could begin representing people who, again, will go invisible, and the sort of power structures, the inefficiencies, the challenges of all of that will persist. So that's, again, why we get excited. For that to happen, though, for us to get civil society to that point, there are certainly some very significant challenges that we have to overcome. There's a lot of work that has to be done to help with the digital transformation of these organizations. And it's not just about access to tools. It's not just about access to skills, work to use them. I think to some of the ambassador's points, we've been looking at this sort of as the minimum viable digital infrastructures for civil society and frankly, all of society to participate in the digitalization of society. When we talk about minimum viable infrastructure, minimum in this case, meaning if you take away any one of these component pieces, it begins to fall apart. We're really talking about 5 elements. Connectivity. Do people have the internet? Second, tools. Do they have the tools to use the internet? Skills. Do they have the skills to use the tools to use the internet? Policy, national policy environments. Are there policies in place that make sure that civil society can, if they have the skills and tools and the internet, use it safely? And then the last thing is learning communities. Do we have learning communities that help civil society continue to learn and grow and evolve as technology continues to change? If you think about those things, connectivity, tools, skills, policy, and learning communities, together, if we have those things, we can actually begin to imagine a time and sort of an ecosystem in which civil society is able to digitally mature and begin living up to some of the sort of promise that I was speaking to, some of the hope there of digital transformation. We do have a ways to go. The last thing I'll say, just really quick, we ran a survey this summer of the 1 million+ NGOs that we reach around the world. We had about 30,000 respondents from 167 countries around this question about digital transformation, data handling, and what COVID has done. COVID has been a dry run, an example of what is to come. All of us will have to move to the cloud one day, whether we like it or not, whether we're ready or not. The corporate technology community is going there, and we will go there too. We need to prepare for this, and the risk and the pain of not being prepared for this looks like what we're going through right now. There are about 1 million NGO jobs lost in the United States because of small organizations who could not pivot to the cloud, who could not continue to provide their services. 1 million jobs in the nonprofit sector disappeared. The rest of the world doesn't have quite as much data on this. It's something that is being monitored. Small businesses go out of business, big businesses go out of business, civil society goes out of business too. There's a tragedy there in human terms because there is no backstop for small organizations. Small community health organizations, small mental health organizations, who are the only provider in many communities, when they disappear, they were the last resort. They are the social safety net. So this is a very serious challenge for people to think about. And unfortunately, only about 30% of the NGOs that we have reached have ever had any IT support at all. And this is not uncommon. Small businesses are in the same space. Fewer than 25% of them have had a digital strategy ever. And yet they're being forced to adopt new technologies by the shifts in the technology landscape. I'm not blaming the technology corporation. This is not their fault. But we do have a lot to think about. If, again, we want to work towards that promise, if we want to bring data forward in ways that we could begin to make more inclusive policy decisions, if we want to start seeing better efficiencies across the sector and begin really working towards a time where I would hope we would be more able to work with rather than against technology, we do have to think about these things seriously. We do have to consider them. And I think, begin working more effectively with partners like the European Commission, like our various national governments, to make sure that we do have those constituent elements around access, policy, skills, et cetera. So I'll stop there. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff that happens when we begin looking at digital transformation. There's a lot of potential. And again, there's a lot of work. So again, perhaps a slightly different perspective on a service sector civil society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And и благодарам многу што го сподели со нас искуството и поддршката што ја дава TechSoup за невладиниот сектор. Посебно поддршката што ја дава TechSoup преку партнери како Metamorphosis и други партнери во светот во дигиталната трансформација на невладините организации, бидејќи таа поддршка овозможува невладините организации поефикасно и побезбедно да работат и да ги исполнуваат нивните мисии. А уште поважно, никој да не остане надвор од дигиталната агенда и да не ги почувствуваат придобивките од дигиталните технологии. Со ова завршува првата воведна сесија. Правиме кратка пауза од 5 минути и продолжуваме со наредната сесија каде што ќе слушаме за тоа како напредува дигиталната агенда во регионот и кои се искуствата и добрите примери. Доколку сепак има некој кратко блиц прашање сега пред да преминеме на наредната агенда, имаме неколку минути за тоа, меѓутоа да се фокусираме на темата на конференцијата. Благодарам на сите на воведните излагања и на сите останати ви посакувам успешна конференција.